the one thing everybody should remember is if you look at the enshittification of everything online right now, the stuff we don't like, the scary stuff, the AI slop, all the things you mentioned, this is a snapshot in time. This stuff is blindsiding us because it's coming so fast. But everything will change, and there will be a reaction to everything that happens.
That's true.
Of course, and just like everything.
So a wonderful metaphor for this is the movie industry. So for decades, movies were silent, right? And there'd be a guy with a piano, literally playing the
in
piano
the room,
in the room, and they'd have subtitles, and they would, and then they invented a new technology for sound, so you could have sound in the movies.
Totally.
And the companies, literally all the major powerful movie companies in Hollywood said it's a fad. It's not going to take off. Nobody wants to hear
funny.
that crazy, talk. Right? It's unimaginable, right? And so they were washed away. And all the startups that came in with the new technology are the movie companies that we know today,
right?
MGM, like et cetera. And so this sort of there's always a reaction. An even better metaphor for this stuff is photography. So before photography, there was a need for portraits, for marketing, for public relations, for to know what another place looked like. And painters were what did that stuff. So if you were an aristocrat or you were anybody, right, you'd have your portrait painted so you could share through newspapers or some other means, what you look like, right? And so the aristocrats would have themselves in this, look really amazing, like with their fanciest clothes to sort of elevate themselves in the perception of people who would see these paintings.
Sure.
Right? The photography came along, and it's like click, and now I've captured a scene, a person, or whatever. And there was massive panic. What is this going to do to the painting industrial complex, right?
Of course, the PIC, of course.
Exactly. And so photography did the functional stuff. It was for portraits, for landscapes, for showing what other places look like. What happened with painting? It exploded into 1,000 styles, cubism, impressionism. It became art. It became real art. It became like an amazing thing, right? As a reaction to photography. And I think to a certain extent, that's what's going to happen with AI. Yes, AI is like the ease with which somebody can put together a press release with AI, literally 5 seconds.
Yes,
right?
so easy.
All right. So you know what? Let the AI do that stuff.
Right.
If AI can do sports scores and reporting on financial stuff in the stock market, great. Let it do that stuff, and let us then like pour our energy into doing more creative work, do the things that AI can't do. That's what the painters did, and I think that's what we can and will do. There's also going to be a backlash against AI stuff. So for example, AI can write amazing poetry. Like you can say, write me a poem about blah, blah, blah. And it'll turn out this thing and you're like, wow, that's really good. That's really amazing. But once we really settle into this idea, right? Once it's so banal and daily, like in our lives all day, we're going to be like, you know what? I want the words of somebody who actually felt the emotions that they're writing about. It's important to me to know that somebody went through some pain and this is what they're expressing, not just collecting all the poems and sort of like generically churning out an average poem. No, I want a specific person who went through a specific experience to express their feelings in poetry. That's what I want. So there's always going to be a backlash. This isn't the government dictating what isn't happening. I think and every generation is going to be different. Like, really how fundamental cultural change happens is that old people die and young people are born into a new world. Yeah. So young people, like if you're like 6 or 7 years old today, 10 years old maybe, right? And you live in the United States or in some reasonably wealthy country, you never knew a world where there wasn't a voice in the house, like an Amazon Echo or something like that, where you just talk to and get all the world's knowledge just by chatting. It's the most boring thing in the world to a 10-year-old.
Right. Yeah. It's an Alexa
AI voice that tells you. And so that mind, they'll take that mindset into their adulthood, be integrating new technologies, and they'll have an entirely different view. We, the three of us, right? We remember when AI wasn't everywhere because it was 5 years ago, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, it's kind of a big deal to us.
Sure.
To a young person growing up into this world, it's no big deal. They're, in other words, not going to be so impressed by it as we are, right? And so everything's going to change, and we don't really know how, but we do know that for everything that happens, that there's always a reaction and a reordering of how we do everything. And I think that's really what's called for. And what we really need to do is change our perspective about things.
Totally. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I had a conversation one time after I always joke about, I always say more reporters need to hang out at comedy clubs after a show, because the conversations that you have after a show is always so fun, because everyone's more relaxed and everybody's talking about their weird things they think. So it's really funny that you said that reordering and that kind of, I guess in your head, you kind of reorganize the importance or the value of things. Like, do you think that we will, and kind of to what you just said, the aristocrats, I have this thought, and I was talking about this at St. Mark's like 2 days ago. Yeah. I was talking to a couple other people, and we were saying, do you think that it's going to become a wealthy kind of flex to have human-made art? Like, do you think you could go to a rich person's house and you'll be like, oh, it's a beautiful painting? You'd be like, oh, a human made it. You know what I mean? Like, do you think that could be like something like, oh, I'll pay $2 million for that. A human made it.
100%.
Yeah.
Look what the situation is in our culture, right? And I think all cultures. It used to be that the main form of transportation was the horse. In New York City, there were there were like hundreds of stables.
Yeah.
The streets were paved with horse shit.
Yeah.
They were everywhere. That was a huge industry.
Yeah.
And at some point, somebody invented the motor car, and they built the Brooklyn Bridge. And now you could live on Long Island and drive to work into Manhattan.
That's crazy.
There was an absolute panic. What is going to happen to the horse industry? Who is going to employ all these blacksmiths? All this kind of stuff. It sounds really quaint, but look at today. Who's got horses now? Rich people have horses.
It's a flex.
Right? It used to be the only way you could get across the ocean or go anywhere on the water was a sailboat, right? Now they invented the engine and the steam engine, then the gas, all this stuff. But guess who has sailboats? It's rich people.